Welcome to this free immigration help channel. Now, in the past few weeks I have been requested to make overview videos whenever it comes to the immigration process. Now, a few that I have been requested was family reunification whenever it comes to the, petition for alien relative, form I-130. So this is what I'm going to be doing today. Another one I have been requested was asylum. Now, obviously both of these processes involve a lot of steps within them. So it definitely makes sense. I thought it was a great idea to make it. So if you have any other requests for similar videos, overviews, just a general overview, all the steps that are involved in the process, not concentrating on one specific step, but just giving a whole, just an idea of what the process entails, let me know in the comments below and I will be happy to address them. So before we begin, as always, I'm going to mention I am not an immigration attorney. This is not a legal advice. All the information that I provide in these videos on this channel are directly from official government sources. In this case, it's going to be USCIS and also the Department of State, travel.state.gov. So let's start getting into it. Form I-130, obviously, you're probably familiar with it, family reunification. There are two major steps that are involved in the process. All right, one is concerning USCIS and another one is the Department of State. There are a few other things that are involved in between. We will go step by step in this video. But the very first thing that you really need to establish, of course, would be eligibility. Are you eligible to petition for your family member, to sponsor someone to come into the United States? And there are really two eligibility basically categories. One is for US citizens and one is for permanent residents. Now there will be, of course, things that will depend on, as a permanent resident, there are certain family members that you cannot petition for, like for example brothers and sisters you cannot petition for as a permanent resident, but you can as a US citizen. And also, of course, the processing time will vary, and I will show you some examples. So in order to help you establish that eligibility, you can refer to both, either USCIS or the Department of State. I would recommend checking both of the websites out and getting familiar with both of them, because you will be using both of them along the process. But if you do like one a little bit more than the other, like for example for me it was always easier to work with USCIS website than the Department of State, but you can find this information on both of the websites. So you already have the page pulled up for the Department of State, but I'll show you how to navigate from the very beginning. This is what the home page looks like. So you would need to go to US visas, because that's what you're applying for. You're applying for an immigrant visa for your relative, for the family member that you're trying to bring into the United States. And then we're going to click on immigrate, and of course family based. And on this page you will see you got lawful permanent residents that can invite spouses and unmarried sons and daughters. And you have US citizens who can invite spouses, sons or daughters, parents, brothers or sisters. All right. And the same thing on the USCIS here, if you want to find it. Probably the easiest one would be to go through the form I-130 itself, and I will show you how to get it in the next step. But you can also go through green card if you click on that, and then green card eligibility categories, and then green card through family, and it will give you a similar graph, a little bit more detailed, and that's one of the reasons why I like USCIS. It's just a tiny little bit more detailed, and I think the reason for that is because you actually start with USCIS. So you have established your eligibility. You know for a fact that as a US citizen or a permanent resident, you can invite, you can petition for whoever it is, whether it is your spouse, your brother, sister, your parents, whatever it is. Now it is time to start the actual process, and in order to start the process you have to submit the form I-130, and it is done through the USCIS, obviously official government website, uscis.gov, and I'll show you how to find it. That's really one of the only things that I will show you in this video, because I have already done a video where we go through just filling out the application just step by step. So if you really want to see that, if you need help filling out the application, there is a video already uploaded on this channel, how to fill out the I-130 step by step. So we're going to click on forms. here at the very top of the navigation menu, and then we click on all forms. That will bring up the page with all of the USCIS forms that are available. You can scroll through them and find I-130, or you can type in I-130 and it will come up right away, petition for alien relative. And as you can see, we're going to click on the page so that we have the actual application page in front of us. As you notice that it is available to file online. I would highly recommend, if you haven't watched any of my videos, I always recommend filing it online if such an option is available. It saves a lot of time. It prevents a lot of unnecessary mistakes. It just makes the process much smoother. So if you can file it online, definitely do it. All you have to do is you have to create an online account with USCIS. You will have a drop down with all of the application forms that are available to file online. Select I-130, start filling it out. You can save it in the process and then come back, log into it later. And all of the evidence that you will be submitting, you can submit and upload online in the application. Once everything is done, once the package is all, the whole application is complete with the evidence and everything, there will be an option to pay right there online, whether it's your credit card, debit card, and that's it. It's submitted, and within a few weeks you receive the receipt notice saying from USCIS saying that, hey, we received your petition, I-130 petition. So that's, is much better than putting it all together in the mail and filing it and sending it to a PO box and waiting until the immigration officer gets to the PO box and opens it up and reviews it. You don't want to wait all that time. It makes the process much simpler. Another thing that I wanted to mention before we move on to the next step whenever it comes to I-130 is, yes, you do have an option, and I get that question a lot, and I think the reason for that question is the urgency. And the question is, can I send the application without the evidence and then submit the evidence later? Yes, you can definitely do that, but I would rather spend another 2-3 weeks and put the whole everything together with the evidence and then submit the whole petition with everything together, rather than send the petition and then wait for them to request the initial evidence and then send the You don't want to do that. I actually done a separate video on all of the potential problems that might be, caused. And again, with whenever it comes to family reunification, specifically Form I-130, there really isn't a case where there might be such an urgency. All right, 2-3 extra weeks, maybe a month extra to collect that initial evidence is much better than submitting the just the application and then waiting for back and forth stuff and then sending the initial evidence and hoping that they add it to the correct case, and you just open the door for unnecessary mistakes. Okay, so you have submitted the I-130. Before we go on to the next step with the approval, hopefully in your case is going to be approval, I'm going to show you the processing time so that you kind of understand how long you will be waiting. And it will be different based on who you are petitioning for and based on your own status. Are you a permanent resident or are you a US citizen? So in order to check the processing times on USCIS side, we're going to go into Tools, and then we're going to click on Case Status Online, and I'm sure there's a faster way to do it, but that's what I'm kind of used to, and then you click on USCIS processing times at the very bottom, and it will open up a visit page, open up a separate page, and that's it. You will have this processing times kind of drop down menu. So we're going to select our Form I-130, petition for alien relative, and you see there's a whole bunch of different ones, so you can use it for any other application form that you submit with USCIS. And of course you will select a permanent resident versus US citizen. So I'm going to show you, let's do in this example, let's do spouse, because both US citizen and green card permanent resident can petition for a spouse. So I will show you just the difference. So permanent resident filing for a spouse or child under 21, and then the field office, let's do Texas for the purposes of this video. But again, between the service centers you will have different wait times, different processing times. Usually it's not too long. In some cases it's a little bit longer because just the process works a little bit different. So don't be scared if you look at one of them and it's like a year longer, because they take certain steps already into consideration, unlike the other processing center. So if you have questions about that, just ask them in the comments below. And I do every other day. I go through all of the comments and I answer them in the video. The videos are called Answering Your Immigration Related Questions, and they go by volume. I think right now the most recent volume is volume 34. So you can put your question in the comment, subscribe, and once I answer it, I will actually notify you. I will respond to your comment and let you know that it has been answered in, volume 35 or 36, for example. So back to the processing times. As you can see, Form I-130, if you're filing as a permanent resident for your spouse or child under 21, but in this case, let's do spouse, to the Texas Service Center, 20-month processing times. And this is just for USCIS side to get that approval, hopefully in your case. And again, keep in mind, it's only for 80% of cases, all right? So 20% of cases, they either take faster or they take slower. I recommend taking about 10% and giving extra 10% of time, right? So for example, let's say you've been already waiting 20 months and nothing is happening. Give another 2 months, right? It's about what, 10%? Yes, out of 20 months, 10% is 2 months. So give extra 2 months to USCIS for processing of your application, and if nothing happens, then you can go ahead and submit the case inquiry, which should be a link actually. Yeah, there you go. Inquire about a case outside normal processing times, and I actually have a separate video specifically on how to do that. Okay, so now let's take a look at the U.S. citizen filing for a spouse. And we're gonna do the same thing, Texas. Let's see how long it takes. 11 and a half months. Again, 80% of the cases. So almost half less. So depending on which status you have yourself, it will also affect of course, the processing time with USCIS. Okay. So we're done with USCIS. You submitted the petition, you've been waiting, you have provided all your evidence, and the evidence, whenever it comes to initial evidence, all you really are showing, all you really are trying to prove is you're trying to establish the relationship, right? So if you're inviting your spouse, you show marriage certificates, you show all the birth certificates. If you're inviting your parents, again, birth certificates showing that these are really your parents, these really are your kids, this really your brother, sister, right? You get the point. That's really what you're trying to establish. So it's really not that complicated of a process, I would say. This is definitely something that you can do yourself with USCIS side. So as long as you establish all of that, as long as you have your status, as long as everything is good, you will get your approval letter after a certain time, and I already showed you how to look up that processing time. Once you get the approval though, your case, it's not done yet. The process is not done yet. In fact, the kind of all the work is just now starting up. This is just like a little startup, whatever. So once it is approved by USCIS, your case is transferred to the Department of State. All right, they have their own called National Visa Center, NVC. And your case from USCIS is transferred to the NVC. Again, it depends. Sometimes it takes a little bit faster. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time, depending on which processing center it was in, depending on which category. It might take, usually they try to do it within 30 days, but it might take longer. So don't be too stressed out if it takes about 3-4 months. It's completely normal. And a lot of times, if the immigrant visa is not yet available for that category, and now we're getting into more serious stuff, we will talk about the visa bulletin and all that sort of stuff. A lot of times, USCIS, they don't even transfer your case until that immigrant visa is available. They wait until the availability is within few months, and then they transfer it to NVC. And I think sometimes it is done this way because they don't want to kind of overburden, I guess, NVC, because NVC is a whole separate other process. But since we're talking about a little bit more simplified spouses, right? In this example, for permanent residents and U.S. citizens, there are no visa caps for spouses. All right, there are a few categories that there are no visa caps, so that means that immigrant visas are always available for those categories, and that's children under 21, unmarried, and the spouses. That the visas are always available for these categories. So Once USCIS approves your case, they transfer it to the NVC. Once NVC receives this case, if the visa is available, and sometimes even when the visa is not available in certain cases, they send you a letter either by mail or by email, depending on what you specified in USCIS, and I recommend specifying both so that you receive it by mail and by email. And once your case is approved, I would definitely recommend you staying on top of your email. All right, check the main inbox, check the spam folder, check everything. All right, make sure that you don't miss that email, because once you receive that email, you will have information in it, and by mail too. You will have the case number, the invoice number, that will allow you to log into the NVC portal for all the further steps that are about to come. And the steps that are about to come, you'll have to fill out the visa application for your beneficiary to go into the embassy, to basically the visa fee itself. You'll have to pay it. You'll have to fill out the form. You will have to fill out your sponsorship application. And if you're a petitioner, you will have to be a sponsor. All right. Now, whenever it comes to financial side, they say that it's just under $25,000 of income that you have to show for the beneficiary, but it's a little bit tricky. It still remains at the courtesy of NVC of whether or not they determine it to be enough or not. I've personally seen cases where a person showed almost $75,000 petitioning for two relatives, and NVC they reviewed it and returned back and said, you need an additional sponsor, which doesn't make sense, because if you're petitioning for two relatives, then it should be $50,000 of income, showing $50,000 a year should be enough. But so it's don't be surprised. If you are unsure, I would recommend starting to look for someone who will be willing to be a joint sponsor, just in case. But hopefully you're not gonna have problems with that. Just be prepared. So whenever it comes to the NVC, this is really all you're doing. Now that you have already established the relationship, you already have all of these documents, all this birth certificate, marriage certificates. You will also have to upload them to the NVC portal. I don't know why. Please, I have no idea. Don't ask me. It's silly, honestly, because you submit all of that information to USCIS. Why can't USCIS just transfer all these documents to the NVC is beyond me. I don't get it. But bureaucracy is part of the bureaucracy, so you will have to actually do it all over again, submit all of these documents now to the NVC. Plus, now you will have to submit all the financial documents as well. And whenever it comes to the financial documents, it's the tax returns, tax transcripts. Now, the tax returns, you should definitely have it. If you're a green card, if you're a permanent resident, if you're a US citizen, you have to have the tax returns. And I do get questions sometimes on this channel, people asking me, hey, I don't have tax returns, I don't know what to do. I don't know how you cannot have the tax returns, even if you don't have any income, even if you're on government, if government is supporting you, you're receiving some kind of benefits, maybe unemployment benefits, maybe social security benefits, or a pension, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Still, you will receive, in the beginning of next year, you will receive statements for the previous year of what has been coming in. If you were getting, for example, unemployment benefits, you would get a 1099-G showing how much unemployment benefits you have received. And that's the stuff that you have to submit to IRS by April, whatever the deadline is for filing that. I recommend doing it in the beginning. So if you have problems with taxes, if you're unsure about tax returns, I would recommend starting now working with an accountant, with a CPA, to maybe file those previous years that you haven't filed, but just getting that stuff in order, because it is, for USCIS, the number one priority is to establish the relationship. For NVC, the number one priority is to establish that you are actually capable of sponsoring the beneficiary that you are trying to invite. So that's really all you're doing. Now, whenever you're done, whenever you're submitted, it's called documentarily qualified by NVC. They will say, hey, that's it. Your case has been approved. Now on NVC side, everything is good. If the visa is still not available, and that actually brings me to the next point here, is the visa bulletin. I'm not going to go into too much detail on it. But if you want to learn more about it, I have done a separate video specifically on Visa Bulletin, and I will keep making new videos every month because Visa Bulletin updates every month. Right now, the most recent one is for this month, March 2023. And basically what it shows is it shows how much of a backlog there is on certain categories. Like I said, some of the categories, they don't have visa cap, but some of them do, and there are a few of them here. You will see. F1, first priority category, is unmarried sons and daughters of US citizens that are over 21, all right? And they have some weight on them. There is also unmarried sons and daughters 21 years of age or older for permanent residence. There is also a cap on that category. Married sons and daughters of US citizens, brothers and sisters of adult US citizens. So there are a few categories. The F2A, spouses and children of permanent residence. As you can see, you have C everywhere, which means current, which means there is no cap basically on these visas. So as soon as you apply, as soon as you're approved, the visa is already available. So if you are in one of these, if your beneficiary is in one of these categories, then you will have to stay on top. You will have to have that understanding of the visa bulletin. It's a little bit confusing, but check out the video that I've made, Understanding Visa Bulletin. There I go in details about it, and I will keep updating, keep making new videos every single month and go over the numbers, go over the graphs. So again, if you're starting the process, subscribe to this channel, and hopefully it will help you to stay up to date. But let's get back to our, obviously, spouses, right, that we are applying for as a green card holder or as a US citizen. There is no cap, so you don't even need to look at Visa Bulletin, because once you're approved by the NVC, the visa is immediately available for your beneficiary. The only thing that is left, for the most part, is to go and get it. And you go and get, not you, but your beneficiary, they go and get it at the local US embassy in their country. So the only thing that you're waiting whenever it comes to the NVC, once they're done, once they approve your case, is to transfer that approved case to the local US embassy and say, hey guys, we have approved this person, schedule the interview for them, and yeah, basically give them the visa if they, if they pass the interview, if everything is good. That process, it usually takes about a month for the transfer. So if you got the approval from NVC, usually within a month you will get the mail saying, hey, your interview is scheduled for whatever, and usually the interview is scheduled another month ahead. All right, so give a few months, 2-3 months at least. Give it for this whole process. If it's taking a few months, don't stress out too much, because that is quite normal. Sometimes some of the US embassies, depending on where they are, they might be a little bit busier whenever it comes to the immigrant visas. So they might schedule it a little bit further out, or it will take them a little bit longer to get to that case to schedule it. But once they do schedule that immigrant visa interview, the only thing that really is left is for your beneficiary to go through the medical examination. Now, like I said, they schedule 1 month ahead, so your beneficiary will have 1 month to go through that medical examination. I would recommend doing it as soon as the interview is scheduled, not waiting it to the interview date. I've actually seen personally a case where a beneficiary did the medical examination, I think it was about like 3 or 4 days before the interview, and then she went for an interview and she was denied because the embassy have not yet received that medical package application that the doctor fills out, because you don't get anything from the doctor sends themselves, they transfer this information to the US embassy. So you will have to allow some time, I would say at least a week and a half, all right? So just as soon as your scheduled interview, schedule that medical examination for your beneficiary, or let them schedule it, however you guys are working, whoever's figuring it out, and then they go and then they do it, and there's still 2 weeks, 3 weeks for the U.S. Embassy to receive all that information from the doctor. It's very important. So once they're done with the medical examination, they will go to that interview, your beneficiary. Very straightforward. Most of the times these interviews are very, very simple. Really, they already established your relationship. They already know that the relationship is real. With spouses, it's a little bit trickier because there are some additional questions, because unfortunately there's a lot of fraud whenever it comes to the marriages and stuff like this, fictitious marriage. Whenever it comes to immigration, unfortunately, it's a big problem. So they take spouse a little bit different compared to, like, let's say parents or kids, right? Because there you already, you can't fake a parent, all right? It's a birth certificate. This is my parent. You know what? You need a DNA test. They usually don't do stuff. Usually they don't have questions like this. But with spouses, a lot of times they ask, tricky questions to determine that it really is, a real relationship and not just someone trying to get a green card because of, you get the point. And then, of course, they review all of the forms. So the beneficiary will have to have all of these documents with them. All of the stuff that have been submitted to USCIS, all of the stuff that have been submitted to the NVC, they will have to have it with them, including the financial documents like your tax returns, petitioner's tax returns, and petitioner's tax transcripts. As of recently, they require tax transcripts, and tax transcripts, they are not tax returns. It's a different financial document that you have to obtain from IRS. So be prepared. I've seen a case where a person was denied because they had tax returns and they didn't have tax returns. I'm sorry, tax transcripts. It's silly. It's bureaucracy. I don't like it. But you're trying to get your relative here. You're trying to complete this family reunification process. It's part of it. So if you want to make it happen, you will have to play by their rules. And they're very, very strict. They're very picky. So make sure that you make everything to the T. All right. So once your beneficiary goes through that interview and gets approved by the consul or whoever he is talking to over there, obviously they will tell him, hey, okay, come back for the passport tomorrow. The next day they will come back to get the passport. The passport will have that I-551 stamp, which looks just like a regular visa, like a non-immigrant visa or like any other student visa, whatever. But actually it's not a regular visa because it's immigrant visa. But here's the cool thing about it. Once your beneficiary arrives into the United States, because the process still goes on, all right? The process is still continuous. Once they arrive into the United States, once they go through the Customs and Border Protection and they get the stamp, the entry stamp, on that I-551 stamp, that I-551 stamp automatically turns into temporary permanent resident card. So as soon as your beneficiary enters the United States, they are already a permanent resident. They can already travel with the temporary permanent resident card. They can already go and apply for Social Security and get a job. That's it. That's really it. And then if all of the fees were paid in advance at the NVC portal, which I recommend just paying all of them, filling out everything that you can fill out, don't leave anything out. Within 90 days of arriving into the United States, your beneficiary will receive that permanent resident card, the green card. So that's really it for the most part for the whole process. There are a few steps, as you can see, that are involved. There is a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of paperwork that is involved, but it is definitely doable. You can definitely do it yourself. People do it without immigration attorneys all the time. I would definitely recommend hiring an immigration attorney if you feel uncomfortable, if any of these steps seem too overwhelming, and you can afford it. Go ahead, why not? Just make sure you hire a good immigration attorney. I actually have a video that I've made on how to find a good immigration attorney for yourself, because there are some amazing people out there that are in this for a good reason, all right? Not for money, not for anything status, but really because they really are passionate. They really do want to help people, people that you know, that want to do it the right way. So they definitely do their job. They know what they're doing. And in case of a denial, if there is a denial that is involved, definitely I recommend reaching out to a good quality family immigration attorney that specializes in cases like this, because immigration law, as you can imagine, there are so many different things that are involved. So you want to find an immigration attorney that actually specializes in, you know, specifically family immigration for you know, for the purposes of your case. So let me know in the comments below. Like I said, if you have any questions, put them in the comments below and I will be happy to address them. As always, thank you very much for watching. Always appreciate your time. Hopefully this was helpful. God bless, and I will see you in the next video.